My grandfather emigrated to the United States in 1887. He had trained as a butcher in Germany, became a master butcher, and came to land in Philadelphia. He had 3 boys and a daughter and raised those children in Philadelphia from his butcher shop. My father went deeper into the grocery business while concentrating on his butcher role, if you will. And he was retired by the time I was born in the very early 1950s. I remember a pleasant story of coming home with a less than adequate report card and handing it over to my mother and her saying, "Please hand this to your father." So I walked it across the room to my father's chair, and he said, looking right through me, he said, "Mama, I don't think your boy is all that smart. Maybe we need to teach him a trade." So with that, within 3 months or so, he had opened a butcher market in the town of Ithaca, New York. I started working after school daily, every weekend, and he taught me a trade of being a butcher and a grocery store operator. My father was the one who taught me how to cut meat. I stood at his elbow daily. I recall going into the store first thing in the morning and getting crushed ice and putting it in the meat cases, arranging the trays with parsley and kale and setting the steaks on the trays so that they could set on top of the ice. I recall putting the chickens in the ice bin and allowing those chickens to sit unwrapped in the cooler back in those days. I recall there was a Catholic church and a rectory around the block from where my dad's shop was. And the lady who cared for the priests and the nuns and did the laundry and made the rooms and cooked the meals was Mrs. Tutti. And Mrs. Tutti was a short Italian woman, lovely person. And she would leave the rectory and she would roll her little cart down the street, turn the corner, come to our store, and she would open the door and in she'd come to do her daily shopping. And on one particular occasion, I was positioned at the cash register, but we had mirrors on corners so we could see everywhere in the store. And she rolled her cart down to the meat cases, and we kept chickens in crushed ice. And there was a glass front on the meat case, and Mrs. Tutti reaches over the glass and she grabs a chicken and she shakes to get the ice off. And she smells the chicken and she throws it back into the meat case, with which she grabbed another chicken, shaked it off, and again gave it a little sniff. Throws it back, and with her cane, she pushes the buzzer to reach the butcher. And out comes my father with a straw hat, his bow tie, and his apron, and probably a cigar hanging from his mouth. And he said, "Oh, Mrs. Tutti, what can I do to serve you today?" "Oh, Mr. Alice, these chickens are not fresh." "What are you talking about?" he says. He says, "Oh, Mr. Alice, I shake the ice off, I give it a little sniff, it's not fresh." "Mrs. Tutti, were I to grab you by the ankles, give you a shake, and give you a little sniff, I don't think you'd be so fresh either." "Oh, Mr. Alice, I'd take 3. When I was working in a position as a waiter while in college, I came to find that I could make a fair amount of money as a server working in the hotel and restaurant business. I had finished up college, and I thought to myself, I've done well enough in the restaurant business, why not stay in it? And for the first maybe 10 years, I worked in hotels ranging from Cleveland to Akron, New York City, to Florida, and studying, learning management of the restaurants with a focus on food and beverage. And the company that I was working for in New York was on Fifth Avenue. It was the gem of a hotel by the name of the Stanhope. And I was under contract as the director of food and beverage. You know, I lived in, I had a very nice salary, I had clothing allowance. They treated me very well. The owner's representative came to me and said, we're not going to be renewing your contract. We're going to put the hotel up for sale. That was a bit of a shock to me. And I ended up working with the Red Lion hotels out on the West Coast. I was in Portland. It was a hotel, but it was focused primarily on food and beverage. They were bought out by DoubleTree, and they moved me to Philadelphia, where I stayed for a couple of years. I had some serious back surgery that took place while I was there. I got a call one day as I was recovering from a fella from Red Lion who said he had come to work for a hotel company here in Spokane. And he asked me if I'd come and work with them, which I did, and ultimately ran one of the hotels here in Spokane. Again, the hotel company, after 6 years, said, well, we're going to sell this hotel and let me know that my time was coming to a close. My wife told me, we are not moving again. You're supposed to be some kind of a food genius. You figure it out. And I said, oh my God, sweetheart, this is the highest minimum wage of any state in the union. There is no tip credit here, and you can't make money in the restaurant business. She said, well, figure it out. So ultimately, I said, well, if we were going to do a restaurant, it'd have to be a steakhouse, because you've got to have enough dollars per plate coming in to absorb the labor cost that's going to ensue. Figure it out, she said. So with that, she started driving around town and found the building that we're sitting in, and learned through a friend that the building was up for sale or had been bought by some new operators. So we happened to know the people, and I made a bid on buying the space that we're in. The rest is history. So I put together a business plan, developed menus and recipes, contacted banks and financial institutions, and we made it happen. My last name being Alice. Most steakhouses, or many, have the owner's last name involved in the name of the business. In this particular case, I didn't know that Alice's Steakhouse made a lot of sense. So I looked back into the 20th century, and one of my heroes, and the man who I think saved the 20th century, was Winston Churchill. So with great honor, I named the restaurant after him. We opened on August the 16th of 2007. The construction took far longer than I ever anticipated it would. However, on that date in August, we opened to a very quiet opening. We invited a few guests, and others found us shortly thereafter. Business was building, and along July the 22nd of 2008, in a business that was directly adjacent and connected to this building, it was a photography company, and they had a malfunction in a piece of equipment overnight, and a fire ensued, and their section of the building was completely leveled, and my business was thoroughly damaged, 11 months old, and it was devastating. I received a call at about 5:45 in the morning that the restaurant was on fire. I immediately got dressed and drove down here. Stayed until 11 or so at night, talking to the fire chief, talking with the firemen on the job. The fire was big enough that it ended up making national news. I would get calls from customers of mine from San Diego and my my sister-in-law in New York and other folks telling me they saw this on TV. Initially, they had no idea how the fire started or began. It took 20 months to put the place back together. We rebuilt from the ground up. Every wall was destroyed. All of the carpets were destroyed. Many of the light fixtures were destroyed. We had a grand piano underneath our chandelier in the dining room destroyed. It was a fully devastating event. At one point, I was told by the assistant fire chief that they were afraid they might lose the entire building.
And then my dad got home really late that night, and he sat us all down and said, our lives will never be the same again. There's going to be a lot of changes, and a lot of things are going to be really scary, but if we can stay together as a family, we can get through it, and everything's going to be okay.
We reopened after the fire on March the 20th of 2010. And we had, we again tried to reopen without a whole lot of fanfare. I never believed that having grand openings and making a big push while your staff is still trying to get their legs underneath them made a lot of sense. But we reopened and were greeted fondly by the community. I will never forget a local doctor came to me and said, "You don't know me, but I've followed this event on the news. I am so pleased, and Spokane should be honored that you had faith enough in us to rebuild." When we reopened, we rapidly moved towards taking over the position of the #1 steakhouse in our community. That's where we are today. After we had reopened, the condominiums up above us were under reconstruction. And we had a real cold snap that particular winter. We have sprinkler systems that put out anything inside, but also above our ceiling to protect the floor space of the condominiums above. Windows were left open during this cold snap, and the sprinkler pipes froze. They burst while we were in business, and water is flowing through the restaurant to where our staircase looked like Niagara Falls. I think that one kept us closed for 3 or 4 days to clean it up. We had bought extra carpet, thank God, during the reconstruction. So we had people come in and replace all the carpets. And we reopened again.
I can't even count the number of things that happened. And people used to say, "What is going on with you guys? Like, how is it that so many things are happening?" And every time they happened, I'm like, okay, we're done. We can't do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. But Bill kept continuing. He's like, nope, we have to make this work. We have to make this work.
Well, in the very beginning, when I put this thing together, I developed menus and recipes based on buying the finest ingredients I could get and make them simply prepared. So fine food, simply prepared is our motto. We buy absolutely the best ingredients we can get. We don't embellish them, but we do put righteous combinations together. Every sauce we make is made from scratch. Every dressing we make is made from scratch. Our bread, our bakery items, everything here is from scratch. Probably the most popular steak that we sell is the filet mignon. It is indeed USDA prime, and there are some prime steakhouses that use choice on the filet. We won't do that. It has heavy marbling. We cook it on an infrared broiler at temperatures well over 1,000 degrees at the surface. When the steak is finished, it is plated, topped with our compound butter and French onion straws, which we fry and use as a crown. The entrees come with our homemade mashed potatoes and sugar snap peas. We have a variety of side dishes that we serve as well, to include creamed corn, creamed spinach, mushrooms, au gratin potatoes, baked stuffed potatoes, baked potatoes. Our baked goods are something really special here at Churchill's. Each one is my wife's recipe. From our coconut cake, 5 layers of cake intermixed with mousse, surrounded by toasted coconut. It's fabulous. Our carrot cake, again, 5 layers, separated by mousse, and a not too sweet cream cheese frosting. We also are known for a dessert that we do called the chocolate sack, where we take a paper bag and we melt chocolate and we pour it inside and swirl it around the outside and then refrigerate it. When it sets, we tear the bag off and we fill it with dark chocolate cake, a white cake, berries, chocolate mousse, raspberry liqueur, whipped cream, and a cookie tuile. So it's probably the most photographed food item that we that we sell, though I would opt for any of my wife's cakes over the chocolate sack. Bob Fish, a butcher that I had work for us when we very first opened in 2007. Bob was an old cattle rancher up in Montana, and then he eventually moved here to Spokane and went to work for a local meat company that Tim Lovell was working for at the time. When the owner of that company passed away, Tim took over the company and he bought another local meat company. And Food Services of America, a Pacific Northwest grocery company, came to him and wanted to buy him out, with the caveat that he would continue to run the meat side. U.S. Foods made an offer to buy Food Services of America. One of the principal reasons they did so was to try to get Tim Lovell come and join their team. Tim has been on the cutting edge of all things that are beef and meat related. He has created some methods and systems that are unique to the industry. When U.S. Foods completed their deal, they made Tim president of Stockyards nationwide. Tim, Bob Fish, and I, from 2010 forward, we had a pact together that we would do whatever it took to make the perfect steak. And we would sit down here at that booth at the corner and we would talk about aging, breeds, cattle feed, processes. Each of us had an opinion on what was the best breed and what is the ideal pH level for the beef when it's going to be right. Through Tim's guidance, we buy beef 2 to 3 times a year at ideal times when the beef market price is lower and when the animal's condition is best. They're not under heat stress, they're not under extreme weather changes in the winter, and ultimately we will wet age the product fresh, it's frozen, and then we dry age thereafter, cut the steaks to perfection. I must say that I was very grateful and honored that Tim Lovell would recommend us to the Steakhouse Hall of Fame. From the restaurant business, you can gain a great amount of gratification, joy. It's like throwing a party every day of the week. I get to do that. In order to do that, you have to have the commitment of your family. Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, Mother's Day. We work. I have no choice. That's when people want to be out. Every weekend, every Friday, every Saturday, we're working at night. So my family hasn't had the opportunity or the occasion to go on many vacations. We certainly don't take a weekend trip. We don't make those kind of choices that most families get to take. And my family has stood directly by my side throughout the process. My wife has committed herself. She gave up a wonderful nursing career to come help me make this successful. My children, my boys have all worked here. My daughter has worked here. So my family has been integral in the process of making this work. Without their support, I could never have done what I've done, and this place wouldn't be the success that it is. My success and the success of this restaurant comes on the shoulders of everyone who's worked here. They're the people who have made it as successful as it can be. I'm grateful to them. I'm honored that they've stayed with me as long as they have. And even those who have left and gone on to better opportunities, they've made us what we are.